This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, Dave, can we get Curtis on the front screens?
We respect the man who respects his faith. This God of yours is he, the giver and creator of all life? Yes. Do you look to him for the cure of disease and illness and to make you healthy? Or do you
Sadie.
How many gods do you serve? Do you have more than one God?
Sadie, you okay?
I don't know why we have two screens here.
We're ready? Thank you. At this time, I'm going to introduce the Association's attorney, Curtis Ekmark. He will be on the screen. He'll be making some statements, and then we'll open it up to some questions. Thank you.
Yes, Darlene, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. Again, my name's Curtis Ekmark. I'm the attorney for Happy Trails, and it's my pleasure to touch base with everyone today. I understand that you all are in the middle of an election, and there have been some questions about that election. One of the things that I just went over with the board is that the law requires that the association allow everyone to vote in two ways. Everyone is allowed to vote either in person at the meeting, or everyone is allowed to submit an absentee ballot. Now, absentee ballots can take a lot of forms. As I understand the situation, the ballot that was sent out here doesn't actually say absentee, which isn't ideal, but it doesn't mean it's not an absentee ballot. Under the law, anytime an association provides a ballot that someone can turn in before the meeting, that is by definition an absentee ballot. So, you know, if you guys have ballots that you were able to turn in before the meeting, whether you hand those in person, whether you email them, whether you mail them, even if you vote electronically, all of those are technically different variations of an absentee ballot. So, as I understand the situation in this election, the board is going to allow absentee ballots. They're going to allow people to vote in person, and they're also allowing voting electronically as well. And again, I apologize. I wasn't able to get in on my computer, so that's why I'm kind of upside down on my phone right now. I'm having to jump in through my phone. So that's the first issue. I was also asked a question about voting via whether there are secret ballots. And the law in this case is governed by the Arizona Plan Community Act, which is ARS 33-1800. And there is a section about voting in Arizona called 33-1812. And if you look at 1812A6, it says the completed ballot shall contain the name, address, and signature of the person voting, except that if the community documents permit secret ballots, only the envelope shall contain that stuff. And in your case, I looked through your bylaws and your declaration, and your community documents do not mention secret written ballots. I know this is probably confusing to a lot of people because I've heard that in the past you did use secret written ballots. But my recommendation was, you know what, let's just rip off the Band-Aid and do it right. because right now your documents do not allow for secret written ballots, and pursuant to 331812, unless your documents allow for secret written ballots, you are supposed to put the name, address, and signature of the person voting right on the ballot. So again, I'm not sure what's happened in the past, but going forward, you are the same as any other association. There should not be secret written ballots utilized unless your documents specifically say that. And then obviously there's some amendment issues, right? There's a couple different issues that I was asked to address with respect to the amendment. The first is what it takes to amend the declaration. And the declaration says that it takes a majority of the owners. So that is just, a majority of everybody in your community, not just a majority of those voting. It would take a majority of everybody in order to amend your declaration. With respect to your bylaws, it's a little bit different. And I understand there may be some confusion because your bylaws also have a very similar provision that says it's a majority of the owners. However, there's a provision in the Nonprofit Corporation Act that specifically says for all associations, anytime you're amending the articles or the bylaws and that vote gets put to the members, the Nonprofit Corporation Act says in that case, it's either a majority of all of the owners or 2/3 of those voting, whichever is less. And again, that comes from the Nonprofit Corporation Act as opposed to your documents. And it is a little bit confusing. I understand it. I get it. But again, that comes from the Nonprofit Corporation Act. And then the next issue and the final issue that I was asked to address was there are some issues, I understand it, and a bunch of questions around some of the specific language. As you can see in your ballot, the bylaw changes and the what do you call it? The declaration changes were kind of chopped up and split into sections, and there were some narratives and some notes put onto those. And I will admit that it's not typical to do it that way. Frankly, that's not the way I usually do it. I usually just give you the amendment and you can take a look at it. However, the board decided that this would be more helpful in terms of explaining to people what the bylaw amendments are and everything of that nature. I do understand some of the questions about maybe potential conflicts with respect to spouses and things like that. As a result of some of these kind of chopped up and narratives, we're just going to have to kind of cross that bridge when we get there. One, if these amendments don't pass, it's a non-issue, right? If they do pass, conflicts, there are ways in the law to sort out some of these. For example, there's case law that says that the most recent version, the most recent amendment will control in the event of a conflict. There's also conflicts between statutes and amendments. And so again, we just have to kind of wait and see how these all play out. And then if there happens to be conflicts between the amended versions and some of the other ones, then we'll just have to sort that out using those specific rules that are set forth in the law for dealing with conflicts. So all of you obviously have the right to decide how you want to vote on these. You can vote in favor of them. You can vote against them. That is totally up to you. As an owner, that is your right. And if you're happy with these, you certainly have a right to vote yes. And if you're unhappy, you have a right to vote no. And then we'll sort it all out in a couple days when the voting ends. Any other questions or anything that the board or Darlene, did you guys want to chip in and say anything?
No, we're fine.
Okay.
Are you willing to entertain questions from the crowd?
Sure, yeah. If there are specific questions, I'm happy to go over them, but that's kind of a high level analysis of where we're at.
Okay. And I will remind the audience, we do have a podium. Please keep your questions. 2 minutes, and we are going to observe the 2-minute rule.
I'm Lee Fisher, owner of Lot 1106. I might understand that your recommendation is that the ballot process be changed, that your signature is no longer attached to the actual ballot. Is that what you're recommending?
It's a good question. No, I believe that your signature should be on the actual ballot. It should be on the ballot, that therefore it should not be a secret ballot.
Why is it not like that in the federal or the state election? It's on the envelope that your ballot is in.
That is a great question. And that is one that the legislature can address, because I don't draft the laws. But you are correct. HOA elections are much different than federal or state elections. When I vote for the president or I vote for a governor or a mayor, it is 100% a secret written ballot. And I get that. I understand it. It's been that way for centuries, right? But we have a specific statute, ARS 33-1812, that says, quote, "The completed ballot shall contain the name, address, and signature of the person voting." And then it also goes on to say that those ballots need to be made available for member inspection within a year after the election. And I don't want to speak for the legislature, but what I've heard is that the reason that they did that is because people were complaining that elections were rigged in HOAs and people were cheating, and so they wanted to be able to give owners a right to go in and see how people voted so that they could actually see if the election was rigged or cheated or anything like that. And honestly, I see both sides of it, right? Like, I like the transparency and I like the ability that I can check and make sure that there's no cheating. But I also understand that there's a value to having a right to privacy when you vote. But frankly, it's not my decision. It's not yours. It's not the board's. It's not management. The legislature made that decision for us when they enacted 1812.
I'm sure in my walk around Happy Trails, I talked to quite a few people. And although I'm not in the rumor or murmuring crowd, I think that the fear amongst many of the citizens here is that those ballots may be harvested for other reasons other than to count the vote. And I'm trusting enough that I don't think our people will do that. But how do you prevent that maybe for future people who may be a little nefarious and they're looking at the ballot?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's the argument in favor of not having secret ballots, because you'll be able, if anyone tried to cheat this election or any other, you'd be able to look at the ballots. You have a right as a member to make a request to review those ballots, and you can check and make sure that there was no nefarious activity.
So that answers my question. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Have a great day. God bless.
Hi, my name is Karen Stewart, lot 1389. Thank you for the clarifications you provided. I do have a few more questions. What is the impact to the ballot if many sections are incorrect? Quoting the wrong information, quoting the wrong section, identifying different definitions than what are being voted on. What is the impact of these types of errors on the ballot?
Some guy gets coffee.
Yeah, so the question is, I mean, what was sent out is either going to pass or it's going to fail, right? And there were multiple different things that are either going to pass or they're going to fail. And like I said, this is unusual. I usually don't do it this way. I usually just give you the amendment. But the way that it's done, we have to wait and see what happens. And if none of these pass, then it won't be an issue. If some of them do, then we're just going to have to work through these and come up with a workable solution based on what has passed.
So you're saying we leave the errors, if something passes with an error, you'll analyze it at that time?
Yes, exactly. And it may not pass, but if it does, we'll have to analyze it and see what we have to do.
Okay, is the statement how the bylaws can be amended need to be on the ballot, the one you just clarified that's different than our bylaws?
No, it doesn't need to be. The state law is the state law.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And you did mention about the notes that are on the ballot. If the notes are objectively false or wrong, how does that impact the validity of that ballot issue?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, but that would be the same thing. We'd have to, if it passes, we'd have to analyze it to see if it really is wrong and then what impact it would have. I mean, if it passes, it passes, and then we'll have to deal with it then.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Fall, Lot 496. First, I'd like to thank you for giving your time and effort in doing this. And then also, I'd like to request that the 2 minutes pause when he gives his answers. It seems like Congress, right? We're doing a, he's just talking my 2 minutes out. But anyway, who do you actually work for? Are you HomeCo or are you a privately held lawyer for Happy Trails?
Great question, and I will try not to filibuster and take your 2 minutes. I'm an independent law firm. My client is the corporation, and so that is my client. My client is not HomeCo. Obviously, I'm a vendor just like HomeCo is.
Very good, thank you.
Sure.
Myself and 2 others on January 29th met with Darlene, and we went over a few questions on the balloting. Now, January 29th is Wednesday before the vote starts on February 3rd. When did you actually review the vote process and see what was being done?
Oh gosh, I'd have to go back and look through my notes. I mean, I drafted some amendments a while back, and then I recently saw this kind of how it was kind of chopped up a little bit.
Okay, but I was talking about the process itself, not the amendments. Did you review what the process was, how they were handling paper ballots, how they were handling the online ballots, those kinds of things?
I have spoken with Darlene about that, and my conversations have been consistent with what I just explained about, owners are allowed to vote in person, they're allowed to vote by absentee, they're allowed to vote electronically if the board wants to.
Yes, that's correct. I know Darlene mentioned to us that she was going to talk to the lawyer after she met with us, so I'm going to assume that that's when she talked to you. So there was not, you weren't involved prior to that. That's the point I was trying to make. So one of my first questions is then who is responsible for that, and how did some of those things, when we talked to Darlene, we talked about at that time there was a plan to have abstention on the ballot. Arizona law says the ballot has to be yes or no abstention. You can take that red little clicky-do and time. So anyway, the Arizona law, and then we did other things. There was a few other things that we covered, and Darlene was very responsive and very much responded back to us on Friday in writing, and all those things got changed that we talked about for the voting to start on Monday, and so that worked out well. On the CC&R, that changes, it's the F comment condition and restriction change on funds of the association. It's requesting, the bottom line is, without reading the whole thing, the current law, CC&R requires that whatever we invest our money into has to be FDIC insured. And the law is, the requested change to the CC&R is saying that we no longer will have to do that as the corporation. Okay.
Sir, do you have a question for Curtis?
Yes,
Okay.
I do right now. The point on that is that we currently have investments in the portfolio that both bonds, we have bonds that are FDIC insured, we have bonds that are not, and then we also have 2 annuities that are not reinsured. So what do we do about that right now? What should happen? Where does that go from today? How do we do that?
Yeah, great question. I just found out about that recently, and I've explained to the board that under the current set of documents, that they have to have things in government insured, vehicles. And if this amendment passes, they won't have that restriction anymore. If it fails, they will.
Didn't it? That's kind of, didn't it? That just get changed, right? We're in the middle of all that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, different community, again, however you guys want to vote on it, it's fine with me. Different communities have different thoughts on this. Some communities want it all to be government insured, and I understand that from a safety perspective. Other communities look at it and say, like I represent Desert Mountain, they did a similar amendment recently because they wanted to make much more money, by putting it in different vehicles in order to try to help their reserve fund and keep assessments down. So it's totally up to you. And if the amendment passes, then the board will have more flexibility. If the amendment fails, then they'll be stuck with that restriction that they can only put it in government-backed vehicles. As I understand it, there are some, and I just found out about this, there are some that are not right now. But there, I've explained to the board, and the board has agreed not to do that in the future anymore.
Who's responsible for that? Who is held accountable? Who is legally held accountable for making the current situation to what it is, to making those purchases?
Well, as I understand it, there is nobody to be held accountable because there's been no financial damages. That was the first thing I asked: is what are the financial damages? And I haven't been told that there are any. And the other group, some group, and I'm not sure who it is, hired a lawyer, threatened a lawsuit, and I talked to the lawyer and I said, okay, well, what are the damages? And he didn't have any.
I don't understand though. Somebody in the board and so forth has made a decision to not follow the CC&Rs and to do this. Who is responsible? Is it the treasurer? Is it the board president?
Well, I guess my question is responsible for, if there's no damages, nobody would be responsible. I mean, you need damages to have a lawsuit.
You don't follow the law. You don't follow the law. It doesn't matter.
Sir, we need to move on to the next question.
My
please.
name's Gary Bradley. I'm in lot 708, and I'd like to talk about the two annuities that I saw that have been purchased in an individual's name. And I'm not aware, I used to be in some financial services areas, and I'm not aware of an annuity being able to be purchased in an association name. And annuities are generally intended for individuals as owners, and the annuities I saw were based on an individual's lifetime with surrender penalties. So how did those get purchased when we have to have FDIC insured?
I'm sorry, I'd like to interrupt. We brought Curtis here this afternoon for the purpose of answering questions related to the election. We'd like to stick to that topic, please.
Well, that was on, the FDIC issue was on the CC&Rs as an election item.
But your questions are not directed to the vote.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, I don't know what happened in the past with respect to this committee or whatever. All I know is with respect to the vote, you're either going to vote to allow things like annuities or you're not, one way or the other.
Well, I don't know who would have voted. We never saw it before now. So how did the annuities get purchased? They had to be purchased with what I saw appeared to be $1 million each.
I don't believe Curtis has the answer to that because he wouldn't have been part of those
Does the
annuities
board?
being purchased.
Does the board have an answer?
Do we have more questions related to the ballot and the elections process?
Karen Stewart, Lot 1389. You stated in your opening comments that we will have election voting at the annual meeting. There was a clarification sent out in writing last Tuesday by the board clarifying that there would be no voting at the annual meeting. The election process itself is completed prior to the annual meeting. And you use that as part of your rationale why these are absentee ballots. So I guess I'm confused. Your comments about voting will happen at the meeting are not consistent with the written documentation we have received from the board. Can you please clarify?
All I can tell you is that the law requires in-person voting. And so I've had that discussion with the board, and as I understand it, they're going to allow people to vote at the meeting.
No, that is not our understanding. That is not what has been provided in writing to the owners. And to change this at this late date seems a little ingenuous to me.
A little bit.
I'm sorry, Curtis. The green notice that everyone got about the annual meeting does state that there will be voting at the annual meeting.
I am talking about the blast that was sent out last Tuesday that clarified that that document was in error and that there would be no voting. That was sent to all owners last Tuesday. And I am quoting, the election process itself is completed prior to the annual meeting. So I'm not sure how, again, that makes our ballots absentee ballots if we can't even vote at the meeting. And to change that at the last minute on people seems inappropriate.
Mickey Aston, Lot 13, 40-year owner. And I'm proud of it. How long have you been the representative for Happy Trails Association?
Oh gosh, I don't know, to be honest with you. I'd have to go back
5 years,
and look.
10 years, 5 years, 10 years, 40
Yeah,
years?
not 40, I can tell you that.
Okay. I'm being timed, so your answers, I think, are going against my 2 minutes, but Dave, count me. Thank you. We're getting different information misconstrued. The deadline for the last day of ballots has been published as noon on the 14th. It also has been published as 4 o'clock on the 14th, and that's in our election policy. You say that everybody got the green sheet, which is sometimes a purple sheet. There are people that were not mailed that document, USPS mail. They have not received it.
It was mailed, U.S. mail to people that are off-site, and it was put in the mailboxes to people that are here.
Okay, so there's some people, USPS, who have not received that. The notes on the ballot itself, when you're listing the from and the to, for months we've had the red line document, although it's changed a couple of times. In the ballot itself, it's all black font or black ink. Also, the notes, I feel, should not be included in the ballot. They are biased, they are incorrect, they are inaccurate, they're misleading, and I have challenged it in writing, and I've been shot down. But there are numerous notes. If you're going to include notes, you should have the pros and the cons. It should state the facts. The only time that I have seen the statement that our ballots had to be signed on page 10, the back of page 9 on the paper ballots, was after voting had started. Sometime on the morning of the 3rd is the first time I've seen it. If it was published before that, I'd love for somebody to show me. Go back to the ballot, paper on versus online, the amendment section only. Sorry, I'm throwing my hands around. Okay, paper ballot. The instructions for voting on the amendments, the bylaws and the CC&Rs is different for the people voting on paper as it is for the people voting on electronic. On the paper, it says, on the CC&Rs and the bylaws, select one choice, yes or no. On the electronic ballot, you have a different option. It says select 0 or 1 choices. So you can vote yes, vote no, or skip it. So my question is, on the paper ballot where it tells me I have to choose yes or no, I have to choose one. If I don't and I skip it, is my ballot invalid? No answer. I don't know why the instructions could not be the same on the paper as it was on the electronic. Can you hear me, Mr. Curtis?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I
thank
thought you
you.
didn't want me to say anything, so you could continue for your 2 minutes.
In the state of Arizona, is it true that voters at HOAs like ours can get a paper ballot? Yes or no? Okay. Is there a time period when that is cut off? Can we get a paper ballot up until the last minute, the last date, the last time of voting?
Yeah, I mean, you can walk into the meeting and get a paper ballot.
No, we've been told our voting ends on the 14th at noon. So I have not been told I can vote at the meeting. I never have voted at a meeting in 40 years.
Okay.
I know, I've talked. Do you have any answers for any of my questions? I've just asked them. And you can talk now.
I answered them. I said, you can vote at the meeting. You asked if you get a paper ballot, and I said yes.
We've been told we cannot get paper ballots. We were told until
I don't know who told you that. All I can do is answer
the board
questions.
of directors. The board of directors has given instructions that no one can get a paper ballot up until Friday before the 3rd. When voting started, we were told we could get a paper ballot. We were also told our ballot was going to have unique identifiers on it, which would allow us to log into the electronic system with a 16-digit code. That was changed over the weekend also. I was told Monday when I was handed my paper ballot, you only get a paper ballot. The rules changed over the weekend.
Curtis, to help you with that, the board did ask that all paper ballots be requested by the 27th of January so that they could be printed out and assorted accordingly. On the Friday before February 3rd, I don't have the date, January 31st, thank you, there was a complication with the rules with regard to the state legislature. So at that time, as I understand it, Curtis and Darlene worked through and they reestablished the paper ballots, in which case they did not put the 16 key digit code on it. So when it went on Monday, you are correct. That was a change that was done on Friday, last minute, about 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. And then on Monday, when they went out, paper ballots did not have the 16-digit key on it so that we could help you possibly log in with your identifier and possibly put it in electronically rather than being counted in the vote. And they kept them separate. And that was a last-minute change done between management and Curtis. That information was sent out finally on Monday. I don't have an actual time. There was a blast stating that it had been changed.
9 a.m., 8:58.
Yeah, I mean, all I know is that you have to allow ballots, right? Now, you can set a deadline on asking people when, they need to request a ballot by. That is very typical. But if somebody blows the deadline for requesting an absentee ballot, they can always come to the meeting and get one there.
We were told up until Friday that we could get a ballot at any time, that we could get a replacement ballot if we scribbled on our ballot, made a mistake. They didn't want us changing things. So we were told during the entire process we could get a paper ballot again. It is a plain old piece of paper now. It is not even a unique identifier. There's nothing special about it. What was your answer to me about the paper versus the online, the instructions on how to vote? Vote for one? Or just
I haven't seen the online instructions. I have the paper ballot in front of me.
You don't have the online instructions?
No, I reject. You said something about like, I honestly don't know what your question is. I
So my
can see the
question
paper
was,
ballots in front of me.
my question was the
I guess
instructions.
my question is, have you voted? I guess my
Have I
question back
voted?
is, have you been able to vote yet? Yes.
I am waiting for changes to be made to this situation, and I did not want to put my ballot in. I didn't think I had to put my name on the back where my votes were taking place. So I am waiting until this meeting to make my decisions. But honestly, the instructions for paper to electronic are different. I don't get it. If you have been with us for more than 6 months, your name has been thrown around as having reviewed all of these documents for a very long time. Guess not. All right, you guys, thanks.
Debbie Cheek, Lock 219. From what you just said, that a person should be able to get a paper ballot all the way up into the end. I had friends who came in on Tuesday, the day after the voting started, requested a paper ballot, and they got it. I went in a half an hour later. My father had had a paper ballot sent to him. He didn't get it in time in order to send it back. I went in, and at that time I found out, lo and behold, if your lot is owned by a trust, that any of the trustees can do the vote. That's me. So I went in with the proof that I am co-trustee and asked for a replacement paper ballot for my father. I was denied. Then I was told, well, why don't you do it electronically? And I said, because he wasn't set up to do it electronically. And she said, well, do you know his email address? And I said, I don't have his password, and he no longer remembers it. I want a paper ballot, and I was denied. I still don't have a ballot to vote for my father.
So let me just clarify. The management didn't just deny people a paper ballot. We were told, we were told by the board we could not give out any more paper ballots. So if you were told by our office, we were just following the instructions given to us by the board.
Right, and then why did one person get one at 11 a.m. and I was denied at 11:30?
Well, because we were told early Tuesday morning, I believe, that we were not to give any more ballots out.
And so between that half an hour, I got denied.
Right.
So my father's not going to be able to vote.
No.
He's going into a nursing home. He can't even read it.
No, you will be able to vote, because we also found out from Curtis today that we have to allow paper ballots up to the election. So not a problem. We can come in and you can have a paper ballot in order to vote for your dad, okay?
Michelle Stoltz, lot 444. What I heard on the question earlier was you were saying that if there's a discrepancy, we're going to vote, and if something passes and there's discrepancies or concerns about the wording, we're going to review it. I would like clarification on who the we're going to review it is.
Well, the first reviewer will be me, right? And then I'll make a recommendation to the board, whoever the board is at that point in time, depending on how the election goes, and then they will announce it to the membership. And then if the membership has a problem with it, I mean, a judge could always, ultimately, the judge is always the final reviewer, right?
But
If
there
someone
won't
has a
be a
problem
judge
with that.
involved unless someone would sue. Would that be correct?
That hopefully no one gets there, but that's always a possibility.
But that's an honest statement that you basically are going to be the main and only reviewer, because you're going to review it and recommend to the board. And then the board will do whatever you recommend, most likely. So if anybody has a problem with that, the only recourse against that would be for someone to come back and sue. Is that a correct statement?
No. I would not say I'm going to be the only reviewer. As I mentioned, I will take a look at it. I will give my analysis to the board. The board will then in turn give their analysis to the membership, and then figure it out. I mean, nobody wants to be there. I just, at this point in time, there's really not a better option.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the decision-making process of who's going to all be involved, how, for these
Yeah.
reviews. And then if they feel like something is amiss in that process,
honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. First of all, I don't know whether any of these are going to pass. And secondly, if one does pass, I don't know if there's going to be an issue. And then I don't know how the board at that point in time is going to decide how to do it. I mean, they may listen to me, they may not. They may set up a committee. I mean, I just can't predict the future, unfortunately.
okay, I think I know what I hear coming from you. Thank you.
Karen Stewart, Lot 1389. You mentioned that if ballot amendment changes are made that create conflicts in the document, potentially more weight will be given to the new section instead of the old section. I would just like to note, might be the only time I get an opportunity to share this, that the inconsistencies extend beyond the bylaws. They extend in many cases into the CC&Rs. And in section 4 of our bylaws, it says if there's any conflict between the bylaws and the declaration slash CC&Rs prevail. So I don't think
I agree with you. That's one of the rules that we would use to address any conflicts in the analysis.
Right. So it won't come down to latest language because according to a plain read, your legal analysis will need to be done. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. It all depends. It may be, and that's why I hate to even speculate about this because, it may be a situation where the CC&Rs trump the bylaws. It may be a situation that the two conflicts are in the bylaws and then we go to the latest one. It may be a situation where the state law trumps the bylaws. I mean, we just don't, we could spend all day kind of speculating, but I think it makes sense to see how this all shakes out, and then we'll just have to deal with it the way we deal with it. I'll give my analysis, and then the board will have to decide what to do. Like I said, maybe there'll be a committee set up. Maybe I just don't know.
Wouldn't it have been better to have a quality document to begin with, without all the errors?
Yeah. I think that's pretty self-evident, right? I mean, but again, I'm not agreeing with you that there are terrible errors in here. Like, for example, I was given a letter, I think it was from you, saying we should have secret voting. That's just not true, right? And maybe it wasn't from you, so maybe that's not fair. But I think there are some issues here that may need to be looked at carefully. But I'm not saying that everything that's been said about this is true. The reality is it's somewhere in the middle. And some of these, when you do explain them, I don't think they become issues anymore. But I don't think it's productive today to spend 4 hours going over every comma here where we don't even know what's going to happen in this vote yet.
Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Fugelberg, Lot 205. And Curtis, I need a clarification from you when you first talked about the means of voting, whether it's electronic, by ballot, or in person, and or at the meeting that would occur. And what's occurring here is both election of for board of directors for 3 vacant positions that their tenure is up, and then also changes to our amendments. We typically then have the board of director elections prior to our annual meeting. We typically don't have our changes to the amendments to the CC&Rs at that same time. Are you saying that we should have to have a meeting for where people can vote at a meeting for both of those events for board of directors?
Very good question, and it depends on how the board wants to set it up. I have some boards who schedule 2 separate meetings and keep these separate and distinct, and I have other boards who combine these. So it's totally up to the board in each case.
So in any event, if we're just doing a board of directors vote, or for a change to our governing documents vote, we should also have a meeting where in-person voting is allowed, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Mike Rugland, lot 1130, 24 years. Hi, Curtis.
Hello.
The question is, isn't there a law or ruling that says you need to give at least 30 days for a ballot to send it out and bring it back in? Well, it seems like 2 weeks is pretty short for people up north. And
No, I get your point, but the law is very specific. The law sets forth 2 specific minimums. The first is that the board needs to give 10 days notice before the meeting, and they also have to allow 7 days to return a ballot. But there's no 30-day in the law. Those are the 2 minimums.
Okay, thanks. We had
Sure.
an election committee before and we never had these problems, so I don't know where it went.
Hello, I'm Deborah Schmunk, lot 1314. Hello, Curtis.
Hello.
Hi. You stated that you work for our corporation. Do you work for all of us as owners or just the board?
That's a great question. I work for everybody, but I have to take direction from the board, right? It's just like if I represented Intel, right, or Ford Motor Company, or Apple. I mean, I represent the whole company, but I don't take direction from like any shareholder. I take direction from the board. So it's the same way with your corporation. I represent the corporation as a whole, but I obviously have to take my direction from the board.
Okay, I understand that. So with that in mind, when, and I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's when this ballot in this election have to be reviewed, first by you, will that be done in an open meeting? Because I don't see anything in their executive session law that allows them to do an executive session.
It could be done in an open meeting. If they're getting advice from me, the board is allowed to have an executive session. But if there turns out to be issues with respect to some of these amendments, I certainly recommend that we have an open forum and discuss it with everybody.
That would be very much appreciated. Okay, my second question is ballot counting. Who is present during ballot counting for an HOA like ours?
Each association decides it differently. I don't know. You'll have to ask Darlene or the board who they plan on having counting these. All I do know is that at the end of the day, like I mentioned under 1812, you'll be entitled to look at the results to make sure that everything was fair. But I don't know who's going to count these in these cases. Darlene, do you know that?
Management will be counting the paper ballots. And we do have people, we've offered to let people come and observe.
Okay, so no one will touch the ballots except staff?
Management, correct.
Thank you.
And a good point to make to that is, like I said, at the end of the day, you'll be able to inspect the ballots and make sure that everything matches up.
Hi, Kathy Stark, lot 1405. She asked one of the questions I was going to ask. The other question has to do with one of the amendments we're making is moving the annual meeting from March, when there's lots of people here, to April, or from February to April. With that, if that is approved, do we still have, and the expectation at that meeting is to put the new board in place. If that is approved, we can still have ballots at that meeting and the ballots can still address the board members that are being voted for and the amendments that are still being voted for. That seems like an A and B thing between the amendment and the timing of the meeting.
This is a great question. If it passes, that will affect next year's meeting, not this year's.
That's
if
not
it passes.
Presented. Yes, no, I'm going on the assumption it passes, and the presentation to us was that it would go into effect this year because our fiscal year this year, 25, is being moved. The end of the year is being moved from the end of April to the end of June.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. You may not have heard it correctly.
Okay.
The new fiscal year starts July 1, 25 till June 26. This year's ends in April.
Okay. When is this year's annual meeting if that amendment
This year's
is changed?
annual meeting is still February 18th.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Hi, Curtis. Thanks for being here and answering these questions. My name's Lisa Day, and this question may be directed more to the board. And I want just some clarity for all of us here. Darlene, I heard you say that you were instructed by the board not to give out any more paper ballots, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So with Curtis saying that we can now vote at the annual meeting, which is week and a half out, are we going to be able to get paper ballots between now and then?
You can come get them tomorrow morning if you'd like.
So paper ballots are now 100% available to us by request. Everybody get that? Thank you.
Mickey Aston, Lot 13. A common sentence I'm hearing is you take your direction from the board. Darlene, who is our manager, general manager, she also has said she takes direction from the board. I just want everybody to understand that. Why has there been no communication since the very beginning when we started this process? I have been present. I have submitted, with a few other people, about 60 questions during this whole election process. It wasn't until 3 days before the weekend that someone really challenged this legally, and the term abstain was removed from the ballot. The coupling of the board of directors and the CC&R's bylaws was separated. The quota and the quorum, I believe, are separated. But it took months from October when I started questioning why we were doing certain things certain way. Well, only 40 people would be given a paper ballot because they had no email. This whole process has come along with questions. The board has taken a few days, resolved the issue, and then made statements like, there's so much confusion. Let me straighten things out for you. I just don't understand the lack of communication. And you all know I say this every single time. Communication is so important. If you were straightforward with us from that very beginning in October, this thing would have gone a lot smoother. Also, this last week, there was a happy hour meet and greet with the candidates. There's been comments by board members directly to people at that party that we have been holding our elections illegally for years. I just want to say that volunteer committee of election committee members worked really hard. Things did go smoothly. It may have been against state statutes that might have been passed 5 years ago. I put that on you for not letting the board know. I put that on the board for not overseeing the committee they are responsible for. And I would like the board and their spouses to stop bad-mouthing the volunteer election committee.
Barbara Throm, lots 2332 and 403. Curtis, thank you for being here, or the kind of. My question is, who can vote? We've been told it's one per household. I own 2 lots. Do I get to vote 2 times?
Yes.
Okay, that hasn't been made clear to a lot of us that do own that. So I'll be in tomorrow, get my ballot. Thank you very much.
Okay, just to make sure, the voting process hasn't changed. All the previous years as well, you got a vote per lot. It's same.
Well, this is just new for us. We just bought. So.
Oh, okay. You get 2 votes, 1 per lot.
I want to, Mickey Aston, lot 13, Lucky 13. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I've put it on Facebook a few times, and I really do appreciate everybody who shows up and who's watching online. There are some people who have not received a paper ballot in their mailbox yet. I'm not talking USPS, I'm talking in the mailbox. I also know of at least a couple of people who received 2 ballots in their mailbox that were paper, and they only own 1 lot, 2 different people. So I would like the assurance, and I know Darlene, Bradley, whoever's with you on management will do a thorough checking of the people who have voted. I don't see this going well. There I go, catastrophizing.
That's okay.
But there's been so much miscommunication with some people getting 2 ballots when they should have only got 1. Monday morning, people walked in and were given ballots, and the point of contact said, sign your name on here and please tell me that you're not going to vote twice. So I want a thorough accounting of the ballots. And unfortunately, there's some people who didn't vote correctly that didn't know they had to sign the back page.
So I can tell you that management will be doing the opening and the tallying the paper ballots, and we will have the list from the election buddy of who has already voted, so we will be able to make sure that they didn't vote already electronically.
All right.
And again, as far as paper ballots, we kind of had our hands tied. We will start giving them out. If you want to come in tomorrow morning, we will give you a paper ballot.
Thank you for that, and I do understand what you're saying. Someone made a comment to me on Facebook that if I wanted to be anonymous and have a secret ballot, I should have voted electronically, and that is a false statement. Anytime you are on any software program, any keystrokes, any keyboard, you are entering your information. It is not secret, so it is tied back to your ID.
Again, you're right, it's not secret for electronic. That 16-digit ID goes right to your lot number and it has your name if I have access to that.
Right, and I'm sorry that our point of contact is not with us anymore. So I'm guessing that you might be the point of contact with Madeline at Election Buddy. Okay, thank you.
Art Lohndorf, Lot 336. I'd just like a little clarification on the voting for the bylaws and the CCRs. You said something about it's got to be 2/3 of the household memberships. Does that mean 2/3 have to vote? If 2/3 don't vote, it fails?
No, what the Nonprofit Corporation Act says with respect to articles and bylaw amendments is that it is the lesser of a majority of the voting power or 2/3 of those voting.
Okay, so it's not over the whole total here, just 2/3 voting.
The majority is over the whole total, but the 2/3 is of those voting. And I understand it's confusing, but I didn't write the statute. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Ekmar? Okay, Curtis, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. And again, appreciate the questions. A lot of good questions, and we'll see how this vote plays out, and then we'll deal with it if we have to, and I'm sure we'll be touching base again. Have a great day, everyone. God bless.
I'm sorry I have to stand up. I think it's very rude if I'm sitting down talking to all of you. I want to thank you all for being here today. I know it's been very trying the last month or so, and I'm hoping we can get through this election. But again, let's just move forward from here. Thank you.